Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the Tea. Tea Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. We are in this transition series, and we have spent some time just talking about, in general, how our bodies respond to transitions. Last week, we talked about the transition of feeling lost. And this week, I want to get into the transitions of knowing when you need to be in therapy, when you may need to stop therapy, and then also when you may be in a position where you may need to find a new therapist based on the transitions. Next week, I'm super excited. We're going to have Dr. Sean Cook, who is going to be talking about transitions in our spiritual spaces, and that's going to be a really good conversation. I know a lot of us go through ups and downs in our faith relationships, and we are at times frustrated, upset, angry with God, and sometimes just trying to figure out where we are with our spiritual gifts and on that journey and figuring out church or to not church and all of those good things. And so Dr. Cook is going to be helping us navigate that. So I'm excited about that. But let's go ahead and get into it since I'm already late, a day late. I was supposed to be on here yesterday, but just too much going on. So I always tell y'all I'm late, but I'm straight. So we're back. All right. So if you're like me, then there are just certain things you do habitually. We are creatures of habit. You may be how you come home, the route you take, the same route. I was joking with somebody that it disturbs my soul when they put detours up in spaces where I only know one way to get to and from. I'm like, what is this? You couldn't have detoured this another time. But I do think that even if it's not for you going the same spaces, it may be that you have a favorite brand of something. It may be how you organize your refrigerator, your cupboard, the towels in the closet, your fitted sheets, your socks, whatever it may be. But all of us have things that we're comfortable with. And because of our comfort, we tend not to like to stray away from them. We know it works. We know that brand is a good brand. I don't have to worry about the consistency, the taste, how the fabric is going to hold up, that it's going to effectively wash my clothes, any of that. Right. We also tend to like consistency in terms of our providers, especially when you're talking about things like your mental health, your physical health, your dental health. You want somebody who knows you, who's been with you, your vaginal health. Like most of us, we find a good provider and we stay with them. So you probably have had the same dentist unless something happened insurance wise, or they went out of business for whatever reason. They retired or moved to a different practice. But oftentimes we'll follow people because we know how important it is to have the safety and security of this provider who knows us really well, who's been with us through the different transitions we experience in our lives. Some of you may have had the same primary care provider since you entered in adulthood. You may have had the same dentist since you were a child in your braces, right? But when we know someone is dependable and trustworthy, then it creates a dynamic that we don't necessarily want to break. And I absolutely know that to be true with therapy. Most of us, because we know how hard it is to find a good therapist, when you find a good therapist, you want to stay with that person. And they know you don't want to be starting over with somebody else's history, they're comfortable. And I think that oftentimes that works great, right? Then what if we have a transition that comes into our life? And so we want to make sure that we're getting the most from our therapy during periods of transition, or being able to recognize, like, hey, I had taken a break from therapy, I was doing well, now I may need to go back. Or you may be somebody that may be considering for the first time whether or not therapy may be a good fit for you. So let's talk about um, making the most out of therapy in these transitional spaces, because as we've been talking about, when transitions hit, then there are a lot of different things that we're experiencing, whether that's emotional, physical, financial, cognitive, socially. And so we want to make sure that we're with people who can assist us and help us navigate through that transition. Now, I will tell you that no matter how amazing your therapist is, they cannot read your mind, though it may feel like they can. Um, I do think it's important for us to understand that sometimes in our comfort with our therapist, we may be a little reluctant to talk about the things that are not as comfortable. And sometimes that's just because we're embarrassed or ashamed. We don't want to be judged. People often say they don't want to disappoint their therapist, even though that's not a thing. You're not disappointing your therapist by being honest about where you are in the spaces that you're in. And we understand that change is a challenging process. There are going to be a lot of reversals. Sometimes you'll be doing well, sometimes you'll not be doing really well. But what happens during periods of transition is that I may have to bring up something that I haven't had to bring up before. I may have to bring up something that I don't know necessarily how you feel about it. I may be bringing up something that other people in my life may not be comfortable with. And so I don't necessarily know if my therapist is going to be comfortable with it. Now, this could range from anything. This could be your decision to start a family, have children. It could be your decision to get married or enter into a relationship or maybe go back into a relationship that you and your therapist had talked about previously, that it was healthy for you to end. And now you're spinning the black block and you and this person maybe have reconciled and you may not want to bring this up because you don't want to discuss it with your therapist and feel like they're going to be like, so what's going on? We just discussed this. Like, what are you doing? And I think sometimes, even when it's issues of our sexuality, our sexual identity, our sexual orientation, um, being able to even just talk about sexual things with our therapist. I think a lot of people have a lot of shame and embarrassment and discomfort about that and what's normal. I get that a good bit from people not wanting to feel like their therapist is going to judge them for the things that arouse them or for the types of things that they're engaging in. They may have multiple partners, may not know how you feel about that. A lot of times people don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about their sexual orientation with a therapist, particularly if they feel like their therapist may have a particular mindset in terms of a faith background or just in terms of some things that they have said that may not just necessarily feel as comfortable. And so they want to bring it up because they don't feel like their therapist is a safe space to be able to talk about that. Um, there are going to be changes in your life. And because your therapist is not a part of your everyday life, your therapist is not going to know when these transitions and these changes come. And so sometimes, because we're fearful about how it may be received and we're not bringing them up, then what are we doing? We're going to tend to revert back to things that aren't necessarily helpful for us or helpful. Um, for us to be engaging in, but also then you are omitting a big part of your life because as we know transitions can affect you in so many ways. And so I'm working really hard to talk around this transition that I've experienced and not addressing it with my therapist. The fact that I may have gotten laid off. A lot of people get embarrassed about getting laid off, get embarrassed about being fired, get embarrassed when they're getting written up or sanctioned, get embarrassed when they may be engaging in excessive use of something, whether that's alcohol or food or shopping, when they are doing things that may not necessarily be legal, when they're talking about microdosing or other substance related things, and they're not bringing that up because they don't want their provider maybe to stop something or they don't want their provider to share that information with another provider. And so they don't want to get into a conversation about while they're using a substance and other options, right? And so sometimes we're avoiding, honestly, because we are not really wanting to deal with how we're coping with that transition. And I do think that it's very important for you to understand that even if you don't think it's a huge thing, it's not a big transition in your life. Transitions are multifaceted and we don't often know how things are affecting us because we're not processing them, which is oftentimes while we are numbing or avoiding or dismissing or avoiding emotional things because they're connected. that friendship that you had for 12 years that ended, like it matters. That's a big transition. And even though you may feel like it's not a big deal, I don't even talk to that person that much. I don't, what they did is just unforgivable anyway. I'm not going back, so why talk about it? Because it's affected you on multiple levels. And so that loss matters, right? Like that's an important aspect of your life, even if this person wasn't in your life every day anymore. You all are a little older and maybe don't live in the same place, or you've had families and careers and maybe grown apart a little bit. You still want to process that. You losing or quitting your job, you surely want to discuss that. And oftentimes, I think people are concerned about how they'll be perceived if they talk about that they got written up at work, that they lost their job, that they were using substances at work, and now they're on a corrective action plan, or they're unable to return to work until they get cleared. And so what people will do is they'll leave out details in these transitional moments, and those details are really really important to help really understand what we're addressing and how we need to navigate it. And I think particularly for people who have a longstanding relationship with your therapist, this is not one of those types of relationships where it's conditional. And so, however you're experiencing life as it tends to life, as you're tending to deal with all of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, the losses, the growths, the setbacks, the achievements, that's a part of this journey because the journey is wellness. And so we're encouraging you in our roles when you're in therapy to be able to help you focus on whatever your treatment goals are. And so what that wellness plan looks like for you. And so if you're having setbacks and reversals and struggling, that's a time when we may need to do some different things, when we need to address the transition from a different aspect or a different area. But again, got to know that a transition has occurred. That death that you experience, it matters. Changes in your life in terms of being a caregiver. You may be a new parent. You may be fostering. You may be in the process of a pregnancy. You may be caregiving for older people. You may have other family members that are coming in who you're taking care of. Those dynamics are going to change a lot about not only your household, they can change your finances, they change the dynamics of the other people in your space, and they change the roles that you're in. Some of you may have moved back in with parents, right? And that's a transition. And so now I'm back in the space of being in my parents' house. And so I'm thinking that's not anything I really need to be discussing because I've been in my parents' house before I grew up there. However, you're not thinking about all of the things that happened that led you to that transition and why it's really important for you to be able to discuss that. Right? These things can affect you in ways that you're not aware of. And so as you're talking through things, oftentimes I'll slow people down and be like, whoa, 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 you gave me a lot of stuff there. Hold on. Like that's not just like, oh, I'm going to say that in passing and we're going to move on and not address it. Sometimes we need to sit in some things and really try to understand fully how they've impacted you, particularly since, again, there could be so many different levels. And we may not always connect things, right? You may not connect a relationship with a partner ending to losing someone else in your life. You may not connect the experience of being afraid as a child and seeing a traumatic event with a situation that happened at work or even on TV as you're navigating sometimes learning about things that are happening on TV before you realize what's happening in your community, right? You may absolutely be in a position right now of transition where another company took over your job and you may not think anything about it because they've told you, oh, we won't be making any changes. However, there are always going to be changes when somebody else comes into a role of corporate ownership. And so being able to understand what those changes may be and how I maybe need to prepare. Are there some things that I've been avoiding? And oftentimes, this is why we don't want to talk about these transitions because then it means I have to face some things I don't really want to deal with. As if I don't face it, like it won't be a thing that I really got to address. So I understand. Discussing transitions can be very, very difficult in therapy, but I want to ensure that you're utilizing your therapeutic spaces to the best of your ability. So, here are some strategies to just ensure that you are addressing the things that you may be avoiding. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. Transitions look different. You're going to have different needs, but this can kind of help orient you to some of the things that you maybe need to paying attention to. And you know, I will always tell you all that you have to prepare for therapy. Often people come into therapy and they're expecting the therapist to guide the session, that the therapist is going to be able to tell you exactly what you need to do and bring things from out of the atmosphere. Now, of course, if you have therapy goals, your therapist is going to be working on those, but it's also incumbent upon you to write down the things that have happened, the emotions around them when it comes to these transitional spaces. Because again, if it's a new transition, this may not be something that was a part of your initial treatment goals. Your treatment goals may need to be updated, which is why we need to revisit our treatment goals regularly. So, this is another aspect of ensuring that you're utilizing your space during this transition, is because often we are in and out of transition. So, every few months, twice a year, yearly, somewhere in that space, you need to be revisiting your therapy goals so that you can ensure that you and your therapist are on the same page. A lot of times there is potential for miscommunication and misunderstanding, and people don't feel like their therapist is able to navigate them through the transitional moments because there hasn't been that understanding of what exactly are we working on. And then also understanding what that looks like in terms of progress. Sometimes when you're in a transition, there isn't a easy fix. It's not going to be short term. It's going to be long term because the changes are going to be long term. So you might be in that journey for years, navigating the transition and all of the changes that come, because oftentimes you don't experience everything all at once. You'll have stages that you go through, whether that's stages of your grief and loss process, whether that's stages of that caregiving process, stages of you being let go from a job, or you being fired from a job, transitions in that relationship that ended, that marriage that ended, whatever the case may be, that friendship that ended. And so it's important for you to be able to ensure that you and your therapist are addressing it and establishing some goals around it. And, you know, I guess a broad timeline, because often change isn't as exact as some other things are. You can get that cast on and they'll tell you, hey, we estimate you'll be in this cast for so long. We don't necessarily know all the time how long it may take in order to be able to navigate through a transition. And often because it's ongoing, it may be that we're just navigating aspects of the transition. I do think it's important for you to ask for what you need to, all right, to be able to, you may say, hey, I need to ensure this is a safe space, right? So you may be telling your therapist how they can help you feel safe in the space. There may be certain things that you want from that experience. Like sometimes I'll set up a session where we're spending some time initially with the calming the body down, or we may have to do that in between. Like, oh, that got really emotionally heavy. Let's take a break. Let's calm down. Let's reset, do some mindfulness, come back and address it. It may be that you want to break things up. Like, oh, hey, I know I got this big thing coming up. So I want to focus on some different strategies this week, and then we'll revisit this more challenging thing, right? It might be more solution focused in a given session. It may be that you need some handouts to kind of help you be able to better process and understand so that when you come into therapy, it doesn't feel so overwhelming. You may be a person that benefits from homework assignments. You may be a person who benefits from outside reading. It's important that as you're recognizing you're an active participant in your therapy, that you help structure that time too. What do you need? Do I need coping skills? Do I need to learn emotional regulation? Do I need to learn how to problem solve? Am I just wanting someone to kind of actively listen because I want to feel heard and understand? And so I often, when you are an active participant and you recognize that you and your therapist are working together and it's a collaborative effort, you're going to get much more benefit from these periods of transition, because then you're ensuring that you're getting what you need. And some of you may say, well, I don't really know what I need. However, if you're doing the preparation, like I'm I'm dealing with this, I'm feeling numb. Even if you stay in that emotional space, or this is what I'm having challenges with, this is what's been hard, you're still doing that work. And so your therapist can help guide you more in those moments because they do understand where the stuck points are, where you're struggling. So that's really important in terms of being able to get what you need from therapy. I also will say when you're in transitional spaces, because it's sometimes difficult for us to talk about what's going on with us, we'll start focusing on other people. And so if you're recognizing, like, wait a minute, like I'm talking way more about other folks and trying to get them together than I am myself, it may be because you're avoiding actually dealing with the thing that's uncomfortable. Most of the time, if you find yourself engaging in behaviors to get a dopamine rush, to distract yourself, to not have to deal with something uncomfortable, you're usually engaging in some kind of avoidance. But it's important to understand like what's underneath that. What exactly am I trying to get away from? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling confused? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling misunderstood? Am I feeling embarrassed? Am I feeling ashamed? Right? Whatever the thing may be that's coming from you being in this transitional space may be what you need to start with, even if you don't fully understand or know what is needed to help get you through this transition. Like, let me deal with the emotions piece. That's most of the time what people don't want to deal with. I will also tell you if you're not in a space like all of these things we just talked about, if you're not in a space where you're in therapy during a transition and you particularly find yourself engaging in self soothing behaviors that often have a negative consequence, right? Like, because anything can become a benefit, and it can also become something that's negative for us. You can absolutely appropriately drink in settings where you don't get inebriated, where you get a chance to relax. And it's appropriate. You also can take that drinking and you can be doing it every day as a mechanism for you to sleep because you're just trying to get home and go to sleep and not have to deal with that transitional space that you're in, right? The same for exercise. You can absolutely exercise in healthy ways, keep your heart healthy, keep your gut healthy, keep your mind healthy. You can also do it to an excess because you're trying to avoid having to deal with some things that are uncomfortable. So you just keep working out, working out, working out, working out, and then you're causing yourself some deficits. So it's really important for you, if you're in those spaces where you're using something to be able to navigate a transition, that may be a good time for you to actually transition into therapy. If you are a first time therapy goer and you're trying to figure out what this could look like for you and if you can benefit from it, um, oftentimes the only time people don't benefit from therapy if they don't actually believe it has any benefit, and so they're not going to go, they're not going to be honest, they're not going to be engaged, somebody is forcing them to go, it's usually not going to be a good fit. If you aren't in a place where you can commit to therapy, you've got a lot going on, you're trying to still navigate with whatever transition you're going through in your life, and so it's requiring a lot of your time and attention, and so you know that you wouldn't be able to consistently go to therapy. um, or if you're in a space where you are not necessarily in a place that has therapists that would be a good fit for you based on the transition, right? That don't necessarily have the expertise. Um, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to do therapy, but you would need to kind of figure out where would I get it from if I don't have what I need in my area. So, as always, with your good plug for therapy, you research and figure out what a good therapy fit would look like for you, particularly around whatever this transition is you're going through in your life. Like if you're transitioning to being a caregiver for aging parents, particularly some that may have a lot of not only cognitive deficits, but some physical concerns. Like you need a therapist that's going to be versed in those kind of aging issues and potentially support resources that they can connect you with. And then you're in a space where you're navigating some relationship kinds of things. You want to make sure that your therapist is well versed in, they may need to know some understanding of some attachment types of dynamics, healthy interpersonal relationship dynamics, communication strategies, you ensuring that you have healthy boundaries, right? So you want to make sure they're versed in that. You don't want to be with a therapist where you're not going to feel comfortable. So you don't want to be, oftentimes people have talked to me about whether or not they want to see me in therapy particularly if we may have a another type of relationship, albeit maybe at different levels in another space. Like maybe we go to the same church, maybe we're part of the same organization, maybe we grew up together in the same hometown, right? And so as people are trying to kind of navigate whether or not they would want to utilize me as a therapist, I always ask them questions such as, are you going to feel comfortable? Right? Like I don't need you to be in worship service and worried about what I'm thinking about you. I don't need for you to be at the class reunion wondering whether or not I'm talking to people about what you got going on, right? Like, so you want to make sure you're thinking about, because sometimes we'll be like, well, I'm fine seeing this therapist that also is my church member, or we have a we're both part of a community organization together, but you want to make sure you're going to be comfortable. You also want to make sure that you're not going to be concerned about whether that person is judging you. You need to know that a person is going to have integrity, that you don't have to be concerned about your information being divulged. And, in general, these confidentiality is a thing, right? But we also know that in dual relationships that sometimes that can get a little complicated, which is why oftentimes we're going to err on the side of uncomplicated, right? And I tell people it's one of the reasons why I won't see family members. Like, I don't need to be seeing you and your sister. I don't need to be seeing you and your husband, right? You're trying to navigate and figure out what's going on, and then putting yourself in a position where, well, what kind of information might you be getting from the other person, and you can't focus. So we want to make sure that when you're looking for your therapist, you know what your needs are, making sure that that person has expertise in whatever those needs are in that transitional space. And sometimes, again, I'll tell you all this all the time, have a good consultation, because you may be in a space where this is a new area for you, so you're not even sure what your options are. Like, what should I be looking for in a provider? This is something that I'm not even versed enough in to be able. I'm doing this research, and it doesn't even make sense to me because this area is so new. And so, having that consultation can help give you a little guidance about whether or not somebody could be a good fit for you in a particular transition that you're in. And then I also think it's important for you whenever you're thinking about starting therapy to have an idea of some goals for yourself. What do you want to get out of this experience? Because oftentimes that will dictate what you need as well. Sometimes people are coming to therapy, but they're actually looking for other things, right? So people confuse, understandably so, psychologists and a psychiatrist. You may actually be looking for medication management and realize that, oh, this person doesn't prescribe medication. This is the wrong fit. Or I might need psychological testing to kind of better understand how I've been affected by various transitions in my life. This person doesn't do psychological testing. So that's why you want to kind of have a sense of like, what is it I'm looking for? So that when you're talking to a potential therapist, they can help guide you better by understanding what your goals are, again, what those needs are, and they can help you navigate that sometimes even if you're uncertain, but they do need something to work with. And oftentimes when I ask people what do they want to be seen for, they get kind of nervous. I'm new to them, I can understand, and I'll just say just generally, and I'll kind of give them some anchor areas so they don't have to go into a bunch of detail. But I gotta kind of know if I'm gonna be a good fit for you, because if you're dealing with something that's outside of my expertise, I don't want you to be 5 sessions in and then you finally tell me what you're really wanting to be seen for, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to need to refer you out, right? So that's why it's important that you kind of understand what your needs are and you can express them to whoever your potential therapist may be. Now, I will also say during periods of transition, you may realize that you need to, that you are at a point where you're going to transition from the therapist you're working with. It may be that you're transitioning because, hey, we're done. We've met all our treatment goals. It may be transitioning because this person is no longer a good fit for me. Because that can happen, right? Again, what you came to see me for initially and then what you experience in the transition in your life may not be necessarily similar at all, or anything that I've got training and expertise in. So this is always, again, that important piece of reevaluating the goals when you come back in, like, hey, I'm in this space in my transition. Is this something that you can help me navigate? And a good therapist is always going to tell you, like, hey, that's outside of my area of expertise. Let me see if I can help you connect you with somebody who this is in their area of expertise. And it's definitely always okay for you to tell your therapist you just don't feel like it's a good fit for whatever reason. Maybe you met your treatment goals, like I said, and you're like, hey, I'm good. I don't think I need to be in therapy in the same way anymore. Also, if you're just in a space where you feel like you're just venting and you're not working on strategies, you don't have goals, and oftentimes, again, that comes from not having treatment goals or not updating your therapist about that your treatment goals need to be adjusted, they need to change, you have other needs. If you are not feeling safe with your therapist to be able to discuss this transition, because again, there may be how you came into therapy and some other things you've discussed that have allowed you to get a better sense for your therapist's perspective on some things. Like, we definitely know that there are treatment providers that don't work with LGBTQ plus IA populations, right? So there's no point to you bringing up those areas with someone who you know is not going to be a safe space for you. So that may be a time to, like, hey, right, like, I don't need to really be talking to this person about it, because they're not going to be able to help me navigate it. That I'm dealing with some issues with my child, and them coming out and all of the things that I want to be able to support them, but I'm not sure how, and I've got some feelings I want to kind of talk through, and not feeling like you're in a safe space to do that. Sometimes you can just hit a wall in therapy, like, we're just not making progress, not really going anywhere, not being able to connect with each other, and that happens. I always tell people I'm never going to be that vain where I think that I'm always going to be a good fit for everyone, or that I will continue to be a good fit for you as your needs change. So it's really important when you're dealing with transitions to be able to say to your therapist, like, something's not working, something's not clicking, and we're going to feel it too, right? So we'll be able to talk about that and figure out how we might want to navigate that. Now, it may be that we just need to reset our goals, but it may be that you end up getting referred to another provider. It may be that you say, like, hey, I've got somebody else in mind that I want to work with, and you all just, in your treatment relationship then, right? And there you sign all your releases so they can share your information with their new therapist. Also, there just may be during periods of transition, again, because there are so many challenges, you might hit a financial challenge where you can't afford therapy temporarily. You may hit a challenge where schedules don't work anymore because you've had to make some changes in your responsibilities and your duties and some other things that you've had to do to be able to navigate that transition. You may get into a spot where you're having some transportation challenges with regard to being able to get into therapy, to see your provider. And that may be because you've had some physical changes. That may be because there may have been financial changes. We're down to one car. And you may be in a position where you are able to do virtual appointments, so via telehealth, via video, but your provider may not do telehealth appointments. They may not do video appointments. And so it's like, okay, that would be an option if it were a provider that did telehealth. You may also be transitioning to where you want to do in-person therapy and your provider is only doing telehealth video sessions. And so that may be another reason, right, to transition to a new provider. So I know that in this journey of transitions, there are going to be a lot of things that you expect. There are going to be definitely a lot of things that you don't expect. And so being able to navigate through all of those, you're typically going to need to have some help. That might be by way of a therapist. It could be by way of some other providers as well. But in that space of trying to figure out things with your provider, want to make sure that you are giving your provider the information that they need to be able to assess and assure that you're getting what you need. Okay, so the transitions don't have to be things that we can't work through, but we do probably need to be very clear about what our goals are and what our needs are with regard to how we're going to navigate this to ensure that you're in the best spaces with the right providers for you. Okay, so as always, you all be well.